Welcome to our Asynchronous Elevate eSpark training. This training is best for those of you who have been using eSpark for a while and could use some tips on how to elevate your eSpark implementation. My name is Jess, and I'm excited to lead you through today's training. I also lead our PD team at eSpark. If you have any questions for us throughout the training today, you can reach out to our support team at any time using this blue chat in the bottom right corner of your eSpark teacher dashboard. By the way, stick around to the end of today's training to see a QR code where you can complete a post survey for this training, and then you'll automatically receive a PD certificate in your email. For today's training, we have three main objectives. The first is to review eSpark best practices. The second is for you to learn how to use eSpark's latest features. And the third is to discover new tips to elevate your eSpark implementation. We're going to dive right into the first objective, which is reviewing eSpark best practices. To start, I'd love to remind you about best practices for getting started with eSpark. There's two main parts to getting started. First, you need to activate your eSpark account, and second, you need to plan your eSpark implementation. To start, let's review how you can activate your account. All you need to do is sign in, which you can do at esparkteacher.com. When you sign in, you can use Google or Clever or your school email. Then you'll want to roster your students. There's going to be a big green button in your Home tab that invites you to add your students to your class. Let me go ahead and show you where you can find that. In your teacher dashboard, you always start on your Home tab, and if you scroll down, you'll find that big green button where you can add your students. And again, you can use Google Classroom, Clever, or you can share a join code with your students. Once you have added your students to your class, all they need to do is get signed in to begin. And as a reminder, with Clever, all they have to do is go to the Clever app from your teacher page. And for Google or manual with usernames and password, they just go to espark.app to get signed in. So those are the three basic steps to getting your account set up. You just need to sign in, add your students, and have them sign in to begin. I also want to let you know about a couple of places where you can customize your class. There's two settings I want to point out for you. The first is the class roster setting, which I'm going to show you now. When you're in your teacher dashboard, in the upper right corner, you can find your drop-down arrow with your settings. So first, click on this class roster setting, and this will take you to your entire roster of students, and there's a couple of customizations you can make to your class. First of all, under class options, you can add a co-teacher to your class. And then second, for all of your students, you can see their audio support. Remember, second grade and below, auto means that they automatically have audio support turned on. For third grade and above, auto means they automatically have audio support turned off. So you can edit that for students as needed. If you need to add new students to your class throughout the year, there's going to be a big green button at the bottom that says to add students, and this will also allow you to automatically pull students in from your Google Classroom or from Clever as needed. So that is the first place where you can make customizations to your eSpark account. Next, I want to tell you about the Customize eSpark setting. So again, in the upper right corner, you just click on the setting that says Customize eSpark. If your grade level has changed this year, perhaps last year you taught kindergarten, but now you've moved up to first grade, you can edit your eSpark account to adjust the grade level that you teach, or maybe you moved schools this year. You can also search for your school and then move your eSpark account into your new school. This is also where you can find the setting for student video recording. This is the feature where students record a video at the end of a quest where they show what they know. You can adjust the settings for your entire class in this Customize eSpark page. So that is a summary for you of the first step to getting started with eSpark, which is activating your account. Once you have your account set up, you'll want to think about planning your eSpark implementation. Hopefully, since you've been using eSpark for a while, you already have some of your class routines set up, but the key takeaway is that students should be using eSpark consistently. We see the most grade level growth from students that use eSpark an average of about 1 hour per subject per week. Oftentimes, our younger grade levels, like second grade and below, will use eSpark more frequently for shorter periods of time. So they might use it for 15 minutes in math and then again for 15 minutes in reading. By the time they're older, like third grade and above, they might spend 20 to 30 minutes on eSpark at a time, a couple days a week. So they might not need to go on as frequently, but they're spending longer periods of time on eSpark. I'd love to remind you about some of the most common ways we see eSpark used in class. Most commonly, we see eSpark used for small group time. It's a really great option for centers or station rotations because your students can work independently. It's also a great intervention tool. So, if you'd like to assign specific skills for students to work on based on their groups that are leveled or individual students that might need extra practice on a skill, you can always assign specifically to small groups or individual students. It also is a really great resource for supporting your core curriculum. Let's say you're teaching fractions or vowels with your students. You can assign an extra practice activity on eSpark to the whole class to give students extra work time with that skill or do an assessment on how they're performing on that skill. So it's really great to support your core curriculum. And then finally, it's a great option for any sort of independent work time for students. That might be bell work or flex time during the day. Maybe when students are first coming into your classroom, they know that they can get signed into eSpark while they wait for everyone else to come to class. It can also be a great supplemental tool that they can use at home. Maybe you assign it for homework, or maybe parents and families are asking for supplemental resources. This is a really great option for a tool to give them. And they access eSpark at home the same way they do at school, but we do have a parent letter that you can send home that will set them up for success. I just wanted to remind you that the adaptive learning path is a really great learning option for students to get started with on eSpark. This is a no prep learning option, so there's nothing you have to do besides getting your students signed in. They are automatically going to be prompted to choose reading or math, and they can get started right away working at their own level and their own pace. Automatically, we also give them their initial placement quiz to make sure that each student is starting at the level that's right for them. So, this is a really great no prep way to get your class started on eSpark before you eventually assign them skills. As a reminder, in the student dashboard, I want to remind you about how our two main learning options look. So at the top, this from my teacher section, that is where assignments go that you give them. But again, you don't need to give them assignments right away. Beneath the From My Teacher section, they see My Quests. So this is that adaptive learning path that's given to them automatically, and they just have to choose reading or math. This will be right at the top for them if you have not given them any assignments yet. Okay, so those were our best practices for getting started with eSpark this year. Now, I would like to remind you about some best practices for giving targeted instruction to your students on eSpark. So, there's three main tools that I want to remind you about and then share some best practices for. First, I'll talk about the progress report, which is one of our main data reports on eSpark. Then I'll remind you about the emails that we send you that can help you understand some of your key data trends and understand what skills to target with your class. And then finally, I'll remind you about how to use our assignments feature, which is where you can assign specific skills for your class or your individual students to work on. So let's start by reminding you about the progress report. This is our standards based data report in eSpark. In your teacher dashboard, you can find the progress report from that blue bar at the top by clicking where it says Track Progress. This will load for you your entire roster of students as well as filters at the top where you can filter for specific standards. So right now I can see my entire roster of students and it's color coded for me, so it's really easy to interpret. Green means students have mastered the skill, so they scored 80% or higher, meaning they earned a high five. Yellow means they're approaching mastery, so they scored between 50 and 80%. And then red means they struggled, so they scored below 50%. Remember, all of this data is coming from the adaptive learning path quests. So this is showing what your students' mastery looks like when they are working at their own level and their own pace. The blue icon here means students are currently working on that skill. They typically move from the skills from left to right, so that gives you a sense of the sequence in which they're going to be seeing these skills. And remember, you can use the filters at the top to adjust the standards that you're looking at Because students are working at their own level and their own pace, you will not necessarily have every student working on the same domain of standards. So you can see that I have a handful of students here, or really just one student at the bottom that hasn't gotten started on this domain yet. They're going to be working on the placement quiz. But if you did have students working on other domains or other grade levels, it would tell you what they're working on, and then you can use the filters to adjust the standards that you're viewing. Another best practice for this report is to click on specific standards that you're focused on, and the data report will reorganize and sort the students based on their performance on that skill. So, for example, I just clicked where it said letter sounds, and now eSpark has reorganized my students for me. So, my lowest performing students are at the top, my highest performing students are at the bottom, and this can help me identify potential small groups of students. It can also help me identify areas of need, like maybe this group I'd like to assign some extra practice to at grade level or below grade level, and then maybe my green group I can challenge with a higher grade level skill. So that is an overview of how to use that progress report. Now I want to remind you about one of our key emails that we send every week. As a reminder, there's 3 emails that we send, but the one that I'd like to focus on is the Monday email, which is where we share a small group suggestion for you. Now, we're focused on this email today because the data that is shared in this email actually comes from the progress report. So, what that email is doing is identifying a group of students who have all struggled on the same skill recently in their progress report, and it's going to suggest some helpful reteaching resources for you. So, it might be questions that you can go over with them or a video that you can show them, but it encourages you to do a small group intervention with that group of students. So now that we know how to identify areas of need using the progress report and also using our helpful Monday small group suggestion email, I want to remind you about our assignments feature. And that's because you can use the assignments feature to assign specific skills to your students that are identified as areas of need where your students might need extra practice. Now, again, you could also use this feature to align to your core curriculum. Like maybe you just went over multiplication with your students, so you can assign the relevant lesson to your class. So, as a reminder, you have access to an entire library of skills that you can assign. And I'm going to demonstrate for you how you can search and then assign these skills. So, from your blue bar at the top, you'll want to click on the tab called the Assignments tab. And this will take you to our library of skills that you can assign. Now, while we're waiting for it to load, I want to point out a couple of key filters. There's a grade filter, a subject filter, and a state standard filter. So you can adjust this as needed. I like to have all grades and subjects showing so that I can search for keywords and see all the relevant lessons that show up. But if you're wanting to target something specific in math or reading, you can make the filter more specific. So there's a lot of keywords that you could search for here, and that could be a specific type of activity. For example, in a second, we're going to talk about the choice text activity that's been really popular with students. If you search for that, you can specifically see that activity type because it's really engaging. You might want to assign that to your students. Another thing that you could search for would be themes. Like right now, we have Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month activities. We also have back to school themed activities and various other themes depending on the time of year. And of course, you can also search for specific standard codes or specific keywords related to a skill. So, for example, we talked about multiplication. If you type in multiply, you'll see relevant lessons for that skill. Now, once you have found an assignment that you're interested in, I'm going to go ahead and click into that assignment, and that will allow me to preview the entire assignment and make sure I like it before I assign it to my class. Now, most assignments are made of 3 parts. That's going to include one instructional video, one practice activity, and one post quiz at the end. So you can literally do all 3 parts of the lesson yourself and make sure that you like it. On average, these assignments take about 15 minutes for students to complete, so they can complete this in one sitting. And at the top, you'll be able to see the standard that's associated with this assignment. Now, once you are ready to assign it, you can find that assign button in the upper right corner. You'll just select your class, and then you can schedule it in advance for a specific date, or you can assign it to your students immediately. There's also an option to edit your students. So this is when you can decide who from your class is going to receive this assignment. Automatically, my entire class is selected. So maybe I do want my entire class to receive this lesson since we just talked about multiplication in class. Or maybe I've identified a small group of students from my progress report or from my small group suggestion email that need the skill. What I can do is I can unselect this box at the top and then just choose my specific small group of students that need this extra practice. And of course, that could also just be one student. Now, when you're done, you'll just press that assign button. Another really exciting feature is that at the bottom of most assignments, you will see options to differentiate. So this will show comparable activities that are below and above grade level, which can save you some time with differentiating for your class. So that is how you search our assignments library to find skills and also how you preview and then assign the skill to your students. Now, from the assignments tab, I also want to show you how you can monitor the assignments you've given to your class. So in the assignments tab, you're looking for the button that's called My Assignments. When you click on that My Assignments button, it will show you your list of assignments that you've given to your class, including the ones that are currently in progress and ones that have already been finished. Now, you can see a summary of the data here as far as the class score and how many students have completed the activity. And then you can click into an assignment to see all of the data. You can always end the assignment if you'd like to take it away from students that haven't completed it yet. You can see when it was scheduled for, how many students completed it, the average score, commonly missed questions, which is helpful for reteaching. And then you can also see students' scores and their live progress as they move through the three parts of the assignment. There's a refresh button here, so you can literally monitor them as they're doing it live. When you click on the score here, it will open up the questions that students got, and you can actually see their questions and how they responded to them. As a reminder, questions in the post quiz come from a bank that's randomized, so you can reassign an assignment to your students, and they're going to see the same video and the same practice activity, but they will likely get a different post quiz because those questions are randomized. If you did want to reassign a skill, all you have to do is follow the same steps to find that skill in the assignments library and then assign it to the student that you have in mind. So that is a reminder of how to use our assignments feature. Last, I just want to remind you about a cool resource we have that can help with small group planning. And this resource combines the different tools that we were just talking about. So, what the small group planner does is it helps you identify groups of students from your progress report and then plan out what assignment you'd like to give those students. So, if you go to the small group planner, you will see that you can print that out and write down groups of students and the lesson that you'll be assigning them. Okay, so that is our review of eSpark best practices. We are going to pivot now to talking about eSpark's latest features. However, since we just covered a lot of information, I would encourage you to pause the training here and go into your teacher dashboard to explore. You might go look at our assignments feature and assign something to your class, or check out the data in your progress report. When you're ready, come back to the training and we're going to move on to this second objective of learning how to use eSpark's latest features. So let's talk about what is new on eSpark this year. First, I just want to acknowledge that all of the changes that are happening in eSpark are related to what we're hearing from teachers. And the key trend of what we've been hearing recently is that today's kids are built differently. It might be, the wake of the pandemic, it might be because of lots of innovations that have happened with technology recently. Whatever the case is, something about kids today is just different where they're harder to engage, they're harder to help grow academically, and since we have been hearing this trend, we've realized that eSpark needs to be built differently too. So we are driving lots of product changes within eSpark and introducing lots of new activities that really meet today's kids where they're at. And we're aiming to have new levels of engagement from your students and really innovative ways of helping them grow and targeting them individually so that each student can continue on their academic growth journey. So that is how I'd like to frame the changes that we'll be talking about today. But with that in mind, there are 4 new activities on eSpark that I'm excited to share with you. And I do want to mention that all of these activities are actually driven by AI. So again, we decided that eSpark needed to be built differently too. So we are leveraging the newest innovations in technology and AI to create really revolutionary activities for your students. So I'm going to tell you what these 4 activities are, and then we're going to dive into each of them, and I will show you an example. The first activity is choice text. This was an activity we actually released during the 23-24 school year, and it's very much built into the eSpark experience now. So you're probably familiar with it already, and hopefully your students have really been enjoying it. Choice text is available from kindergarten all the way to 8th grade. After we released choice texts, we also introduced a math version of this activity called Choice Math. And this is going to be very similar to how choice text works, except students are creating extended word problems and answering math questions. Now, I will show you how choice text works in a second and remind you that how it works is very similar to choice math. The other 2 activities we'll be talking about today are eSpark Writing and the Reading Lab. eSpark Writing represents a new subject being added to eSpark. So eSpark has primarily been math and reading, but as of spring of the 23-24 school year, we've introduced writing as well. Writing is currently available for 2nd to 5th grade students aligned to those grade level standards. And this is an assignable activity, which I will show you how you can give to your students soon. The Reading Lab is brand new this fall, and this is a phonics and fluency activity that actually uses speech recognition to allow your students to practice specific words and sounds. So I'm very excited to show you the Reading Lab towards the end of this objective. But first, now that you know what activities we're going to be focused on for this section, we're going to dive into the choice text activity first. So hopefully you're again pretty familiar with choice text at this point, but I do want to remind you about a couple key pieces of choice text and how this feature works. And then I'll also share some new things that we are excited about with choice text for the 24-25 school year. So again, choice text is our personalized reading activity. It was our first AI-driven activity on eSpark. And with choice text, students work with our character Rocky to create a unique text that they'll be using to practice whichever skill they're working on. So all students might be practicing the same standard, but they have a unique text that they're working on that they actually helped create. Once they're done reading their text, we then ask them comprehension questions that are aligned to the text that they created. So I would love to demonstrate how this activity works for you. Let's go ahead and take a look. Now, something that is really new and exciting in eSpark this year is from your teacher dashboard. If you go to your home tab, there's a new section called the Try It section. And you are actually able to try all of these AI powered activities for yourself from your home tab. So that is how we will be demonstrating these activities today. So starting with choice text, I'm going to go ahead and look at a literature example. And again, I'll just remind you how this feature works. Now, as we get started, I will let you know that right now I'm working as a 3rd grade student, and we'll talk about how the experience is different for students based on their grade level. I am also working on a literature standard right now, so the type of text we're creating is a story. But remember, students can also create informational texts like articles if they're working on an informational standard. They can also create decodable readers if they're working on a reading foundation standard. So, since we're creating a story, the first choice we get to make is to describe the main character of our story. Now, since I'm a 3rd grader, I can actually type in my own responses here, but for 2nd grade and below, they will just see these pre-selected options. So, I'm going to do a golden retriever as my character because I have a golden retriever, and I always think it's really fun and special to read a story about my own dog. My dog's name is Marvel, so that's what we're going to name our character. And that's the second choice that I get to make. The third choice I get to make is to determine a character trait. I'm going to go with funny, one of our
Funny.
pre-selected options. And then finally, I get to choose a setting for our story. And again, I have options to choose from, or I could type in my own response. I'm going to go with C because I live in California and
C.
we love to spend time at the ocean. So those are the couple of choices I get to make when creating my story. And now I'm going to press start reading. So what eSpark is doing now is generating for us a unique text that we just helped create based on our inputs. And my favorite part of the experience is always the image that gets generated to go along with the story. It really brings Marvel to life. So I really feel like I'm reading a story about my dog. Now I'll just go ahead and read the first paragraph for you. So we have Marvel's Big Sea Adventure. It says, Marvel the Golden Retriever loved the sea. He was a funny dog. He liked to make everyone laugh. One sunny morning, Marvel decided to explore the sea. He wanted to find a hidden treasure. So that is the start of a really cool story that we just helped create. Couple of features I want to remind you of. In the upper left corner, we have the speaker button, and this will actually read the story aloud to us. All students have access to that feature for this activity. There's also a Make Easier button. So if I press this button, it will rewrite the story for us one grade level below. And what you're noticing here is that the length of the text actually shortened. So typically we see the sentences get shorter, the total length of the story gets shorter as well. And that's part of what makes it more accessible to students so that they can read it on their own. Now, when we are done reading the text, the key part of the activity is actually answering the comprehension questions that are aligned to the standard we're working on. So now that we're done reading, eSpark opens up a split screen for us and starts to ask us
Great.
questions. First, we're just giving feedback on the text. Then we'll be answering questions that are aligned to the standard that we're currently working on. So my first quiz question, I get to say, who is Marvel's owner? Let's just say I choose the wrong name. What's really cool about this activity and where this personalized remediation component comes in is where Rocky gives hints to students based on their performance. So in this case, the hint is pay attention to the part where Marvel's owner is mentioned giggling and following him to the beach. So the hints are directly based on the text that the student helped create. Now, when students get the answer right, they also get celebrated. So, again, it's a totally unique experience for each student, and that's what leads to really high levels of engagement. So, hopefully, your students have absolutely been loving choice text. Now, I'm excited to share some things that are new on choice text this year. First of all, we have new types of choice texts. I mentioned that we have some themed activities like back to school, March Madness, Asian and Pacific Islander Heritage Month. So, depending on the time of year, you can search for specific themes, and there will be relevant choice texts with unique different choices that students can make. We also have new genre based choice text this year. So, for example, we have mystery, science fiction, drama, poetry, various types of text that your students can create. And again, different standards that they're able to work on align to those texts. Here are some examples of images created to go along with choice text. And again, we're just really excited to say that there are hundreds of new activities for your students this year and different topics that we know are going to be engaging for them. So be on the lookout for all of those new choice texts, and we're excited for your class to try them out. Now, I wanted to remind you about a feature in eSpark that is closely tied to choice text, and that is the class library feature. When students get to the end of every choice text activity, we invite them to publish their text to the class library. They can say no or they can say yes, and either way, they'll be able to go back and access their story from the class library. So, I want to remind you what the class library looks like for students. In the student dashboard, if they scroll all the way down to the bottom, they will see their class library, and they'll have one class library for every class that they are in. When they click into the class library, they can see first all of the texts that have been published by their classmates. They can even see popular ones because they can favorite them. And then if they have not published something, they can go to My Library to see the text that they have kept private. So, this is a really great way to build excitement and joy in reading and make choice text a shared experience for the class. Now, couple of benefits of the class library. Again, this is a really great way to foster excitement and investment in reading. It's also a great way to develop reading habits, and then also students can continue to identify topics that they are excited to read about. So, with those benefits in mind, I would love to share some suggestions for how you can leverage the class library this year. This might be a place that you direct students to when you have extra time or if you give students a choice for what to work on. Maybe you're picking a text to highlight each week from the class library and you can do a read aloud. Maybe you're printing out some of these and displaying them on a bulletin board or creating a book for the class. You might be sharing this with parents as well as part of a work portfolio for students. You can have students do a think, pair, share based on the readings that they're doing. And then I'm also going to share some printables that you can use to really just elevate the choice text experience. Now, before I share those printables, I just want to remind you where you can find your students' choice text and the class library in your teacher dashboard. So, in your teacher dashboard, from the top blue bar, there's a new tab called the Student Showcase tab. This is where all of the work that your students create will show on eSpark. So you'll be able to see different works that your students have created, and you can filter by work type, including choice texts. So that's going to be a really great place to come to see the work your students have created. So now you know some tips for leveraging the class library. I want to remind you about some of our printables we have. One example is we have choice text superlative cards. So for example, you can reward the funniest choice text, the most entertaining choice text, the most inspiring, or most suspenseful. This is a resource that you can find on our Sparktacular freebies page. So I'll go ahead and remind you how you can find that. From your teacher dashboard, if you go back to your home tab, all you need to do is scroll down to the bottom, and any of the buttons that you click from the Sparktacular freebies section will take you to our Sparktacular freebies page. So once you're here, there's lots of different resources, including specific resources for choice text and the class library. Okay, so that was a summary for you of our choice texts feature. Remember that we do have a math version of that activity as well. And if you go to your assignments feature, you can search for the keywords choice texts or choice math to find those activities. And again, the choice math activity is really similar to choice text, except students create a extended word problem where they can then answer math questions. So again, I'm just searching for choice math to find those word problems. Next, we are going to talk about the new eSpark writing feature. So again, this feature was released in spring of the 23-24 school year. And with eSpark writing, we have this brand new subject on eSpark writing, which is going to be really helpful for things like test prep and introducing writing skills to your students. So meet Willow. Willow is a new character on eSpark that is serving as our writing tutor. We have different types of writing assignments, including informative, argumentative, and narrative writing as well. I'm going to be showing you an informative example. So in the teacher dashboard, I'm going back to my home tab to that try it section to show you how eSpark writing works. So I'm clicking where it says writing, let's write together with our character Willow. Now again, I am showing you an informative writing example right now. And I mentioned earlier that this activity is currently available aligned to standards from 2nd grade to 5th grade, but really any grade level could try this out. It's going to be a unique experience for each student. So as I'm getting started, the first thing I get to do is I get to choose a topic that I want to write about. Now, all of the topics that I'm seeing here, these are actually choice texts that I've previously created on eSpark. They're going to be informative choice texts. So I've already demonstrated that these are topics that I am interested in, and now I get to choose one of them to write more about. So all of your students will have unique selections here based on the choice text that they've previously created. I'm going to go ahead and write about rock climbing. Now that I have selected my topic, I can actually reread that choice text I created to get a reminder on what this topic is all about. And as I'm rereading, Willow is going to be thinking about different options for how I could respond to this text. So I get to choose between comparing the equipment needed for bouldering and rope climbing, explaining how safety is managed in bouldering and rope climbing, or describing the height differences between bouldering and rope climbing. I'm going to go with the first option here. I'm now making my selection, and once I've done that, Willow is going to open up a text editor for me where I will have my writing space. Now, what's really helpful about Willow is that she's always going to give students a sentence starter as well. So at the top, I have a reminder about what my prompt is, and here you can also see I have a sentence starter. Now, what Willow has said is, can you think of a fun fact or question about rock climbing to start your paragraph? Here's a hint to get you going. So it's really helpful to see what tips Willow is giving to individual students based on what their topic is and how they're performing. Now, if I want a reminder about details that I can include in my text, I can always refer back to the choice text. In the upper left corner, I have my image, and I can click on that image to reread the text. Now, I can't copy and paste from here, which is great, but I do have the ability to go back and find those details. So, for example, I might say, to climb safely, climbers use different types of safety equipment depending on the type of climbing. I'm going to fix my typo there. They are doing. And now I'm going to go ahead and submit that sentence to Willow. Now, you saw me make a typo and fix that, but we recognize that sometimes students make typos and they're not aware of it. Now, Willow is really good at interpreting those typos that students make. Sometimes Willow offers to help students correct those, but most of the time, Willow is more focused on supporting whichever standard they're currently working on. So don't worry too much about students making mistakes with grammar or spelling. Willow is really good at responding to what they said and supporting them where they really need it. So in this case, Willow said, fantastic start. That sentence nicely sets you up for your topic on the differences in equipment between bouldering and rope climbing. So now she's giving me a couple of suggestions, like, can you add 2 sentences about the specific equipment boulderers use? Now, let's just say that I got off task. I'm going to write a sentence here. I don't want to do this. Let's see how Willow responds. Again, my favorite part is how specific Willow gets in responding to exactly what students are saying. So in this case, Willow said, hey there, it sounds like you might be feeling a bit stuck or unsure, and that's totally okay. Writing can be challenging, but I'm here to help you through it. So Willow continues on and gives students a hint about what they can write about next. And as you can see, Willow is very encouraging to students based on how they're doing. So in this case, they're making a paragraph, but as a reminder, we are also adding that argumentative opinion writing and narrative writing as well. Now, if you would like to see the writing drafts that your students are creating, again, you'll just want to go to that Student Showcase tab. There's going to be a red indicator for any writing that they've done, and you can also filter for eSpark writing. So again, that's just going to be in your teacher dashboard. That Student Showcase tab is where you can see their writing drafts. Now that you've seen it in action, I want to suggest a couple of ways that you can implement this new eSpark writing feature. You could use this as a new center as part of your station rotations. You could specifically assign a writing activity. It's a really great way to connect reading and writing. So first, you could have students do an RI, informational choice text activity, and then you could also assign them writing, so they can make the connection between the reading and the writing. And then, of course, this is going to be a really great test prep resource. Now, we've mentioned it a couple times, but I just want to remind you, this feature is only available through our assignments feature. So what you'll want to do is from that teacher dashboard, you'll go to the assignments tab and you can just search for eSpark writing. And that is going to pull this activity up for you. All right, so that was our writing feature in eSpark. The last activity we're going to talk about, and the one I'm most excited to share because this is brand new, is our eSpark Reading Lab. This is our phonics and fluency practice activity that leverages AI and the science of reading and speech recognition. So we just were talking about our new character, Willow. Now you can meet Fennec the fox, who is our tutor for reading phonics and fluency. You can see that Fennec has really big ears, so Fennec is ready to listen to your students, and this is where they get real-time feedback while they practice pronouncing specific sounds and words. So again, I would love to show you this activity in action. And as a reminder, these reading lab activities will be available for kindergarten to 3rd grade. So back in my teacher dashboard, I'm going to go to that home tab. And again, I'm going to the try it section. This is where I'll be clicking on the reading lab to show you how Fennec works. Now, as we get started, I'm going to be practicing saying specific words, and I'll show you how Fennec reacts when I get words correct, and how Fennec steps into support when I need some extra help.
Let's practice reading words. Can you read this word to me? Go ahead, I'm listening.
Chat.
Great job.
Okay, so that was the example of the first word I'm practicing. You can see we'll be practicing a total of 5 words in this activity. And in that case, I got the word right, so Fennec celebrated me. Now I'm going to show you how Fennec steps into support when I get a word wrong.
Can you read this word to me? Go ahead, I'm listening.
Sush.
Watch as I tap each dot and say each sound in the word. Uh, ch. Now I'll blend the sounds to make such. Now it's your turn. Tap each dot and say the sound.
S- Uh. Ch.
Now blend the sounds.
Such.
Great job.
Okay, so in that example, you saw that Fennec gave me what we're calling a micro intervention, where we broke the word down at the phoneme level and practiced pronouncing each sound. And also, Fennec modeled it for the students. So they have that gradual release of responsibility where they get that support along the way as they're practicing each sound. Now, in that case, I got the word right. So again, we're going to get a green check because after that extra support, I still got the word right. If I had gotten the word wrong, we would get a red X over the word that told us up here that we did not get the word right. All right, so I would love to show you how you can get some insights into how your students are performing on this activity. So this is an activity that, again, you can assign from the assignments feature. And then when you go into your My Assignments to track how students are performing, you can actually see all the words that they got right and wrong. And there's going to be a play button where you can actually hear them pronounce the word. So let me remind you how you can find this. In your teacher dashboard, again, from that assignments tab, you're looking for that button that says My Assignments, and then you'll be able to see from the specific assignment how your students performed. So in this case, here is one of my reading lab activities. We have phonics decoding for CH. And then I can click on the score to see those insights into how students performed on that word, and I can listen to the response.
Chop.
Okay, so the goal of this activity is to hopefully save you all some time with having a little bit less of that one on one instruction that requires lots of time demands from teachers and allows you to focus on the areas where we've identified that students need some extra support. So, this is hopefully very aligned to how you are doing phonics and fluency instruction with your students in class. We are going to have over 200 of those activities available by the end of the school year. So we're really excited for you all to have access to that this year to support your classes. Now, another way that we'll be supporting you with data is actually through an additional email that we'll share with you. Every day where you have 5 or more students complete a reading lab activity, you will get an email from eSpark that summarizes how they performed on their reading lab activities. So again, we're hoping to save you some time by sharing some of those data highlights with you via email. Now that you've seen this activity in action, again, I want to suggest some possible implementation models. This could, again, be a really great center for your students. We have tested this activity out with groups of students that have been working together without headphones or having dedicated microphones. And the sound quality works out so that we have not noticed any issues with multiple students working at the same table on this activity. So this is definitely going to be a great center option for you. It can be a really great way to assess your students to identify potential small groups based on patterns that you're noticing in their reading lab data. Of course, again, it's another great test prep resource, and it can help you identify areas for reteaching with the whole class or small groups. So we're very excited for you all to try that activity out this year, and we cannot wait for your feedback. Okay, so now we have talked about all of eSpark's newest AI powered activities. Again, I would love to invite you to pause the training here to give yourself some work time. I recommend about 5 minutes or so. Remember that you can go to that try it section to see these activities for yourself. You can also go to the assignments feature and search for those keywords, or even the student showcase tab to review work completed by your students so that you can explore all of this for yourself. When you're ready, we'll be moving on to our final objective for today's training, which is to discover new tips to elevate your eSpark implementation. So, let's wrap up today's training by sharing some tips to elevate your eSpark implementation. There are two main topics that I'll be focusing on as we wrap up. The first is fostering accountability on eSpark, and the second is motivating and celebrating students. So, first, fostering accountability on eSpark. I have a couple of tips for you. Now, we talked about in the beginning when you're planning your eSpark implementation, you want to see consistent usage with your students. We actually recommend that you set a really specific goal for them. This could be a minutes goal, like students are required to complete 15 minutes on math a day and 15 minutes on reading a day, or it could be completing a specific number of activities. We have one third grade teacher that said students are required to complete at least one activity as part of their morning work every morning. I usually have every student complete that one island plus extra because they love it. So we definitely recommend setting those specific goals. And as a reminder, we see the most growth with students that use eSpark for about 1 hour per subject per week. Now, as a reminder, one of our other data reports, the activity report, will allow you to keep track of the activities that students are completing as well as the time that they're spending on eSpark. So you can find that activity report from that blue bar at the top by clicking on the activity tab. Remember that you can look at scores and you can also look at minutes to see that average time that students are spending. So, this is going to be the best report to look at as far as fostering that accountability once you've set specific goals for your class. All right. Another tip that I have for you for fostering accountability is to use more of our free printouts, including the accountability log and the pre and the post quiz tracker. So these are printouts that you can use with your students and actually have them be writing notes while they're working on eSpark. So here is a screenshot of both of those resources. Again, we have the accountability log where students can write the skill they're working on with their start time if they stayed focused. And then we have the pre and the post quiz tracker. Again, you can find both of these resources from our Sparktacular Freebies webpage. You can find that from the bottom of your home tab. And another thing you can try is our support feature. In the blue chat button in the bottom right corner, you can search for those resources specifically, and then you'll be able to find those right away. So those are my tips for you on fostering accountability with your class. The final topic for today is resources for motivating and celebrating your students. When it comes to motivating students on eSpark, we absolutely recommend leveraging high fives. You can keep track of high fives your students have earned in your activity report. And remember that one of our emails we send every week on Wednesdays is the high five celebration email. And that's where we will tell you all of your students that have earned high fives throughout the last week. You might want to give those students a shout out or give them real high fives. Or again, we have a bunch of printable resources you can use to celebrate those high fives. And some of those are individual trackers. Some of them are trackers you can use as the whole class if you're having a competition. So we absolutely recommend leveraging those to build some excitement and motivation. Here are some examples of those resources. We have high five cutouts that you can display on your bulletin board. One teacher shared that every week students write their name on a cutout hand. We have a high five wall of fame. So that's one really great example. Here's an example of an individual tracker that you could print out for each student. You can give them a sticker for every high five they earn, and then they can earn rewards. So, for example, this teacher shared, I give my second graders the high five tracker poster to help them track their own progress on eSpark. Once they get all their jetpacks, they earn a trip to the prize corner. So, that's an example of how you can motivate individual students. Lastly, we have high five certificates. This can be a really fun prize for students to take home and show their families. We have mini certificates and full size certificates. So when students see their names in that high five email, you can write their names on these certificates and pass them out. One teacher shared each week when the email comes through, I write their names on one of the smaller certificates. I then announce the winners. They get to color their name on the class tracker, and I give them an actual high five. So that's a great example of a teacher combining multiple of these suggestions to really build a lot of excitement around earning those high fives. All right, so now we've gone over some tips for elevating your eSpark implementation by fostering accountability, celebrating and motivating students. I'd love to invite you to have one more little session of work time before you end today's asynchronous training. You can use about 5 or 10 minutes to continue to explore your teacher dashboard and to think about your eSpark implementation this year. You might plan when you'll use eSpark, how you'll use eSpark, how you're going to incorporate those latest features and activities we went over, and think about something new that you'll try out this year. When you are all set, you can go ahead and complete our post survey. I mentioned that there would be a QR code at the end of our training today. You can scan that QR code to take our post PD survey, and then you will get that PD certificate automatically sent to your email that says that you attended this virtual training. I really appreciate your feedback. It helps us make these training sessions more valuable. And also, if you would like to share feedback on eSpark in general, we will see those responses and pass that feedback along to our team. So, thank you in advance. I hope you enjoyed today's asynchronous training. And remember, you can always reach out to our support team if you have any questions.